We left off last week with some unanswered questions, and hopefully we'll get to address some of them today. We're in chapter 6, Mishnah 9, story of Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma, and how he's walking on the road, and a person stops him and gives him this incredible proposal, come live with us, and we're going to give you a tremendous amount of money. And he says, all the money in the world will never convince me to live anywhere else except in a place of Torah. So we examined last week what's the nature of the person, what was the person thinking, how come their social graces seem to be lacking. Rabbi Yossi doesn't greet him, the other person doesn't ask him his name. So we addressed all of that last week. But we had one overarching question, which was, why does he give him a whole shiur at the end of the Mishnah? Instead of just simply saying, listen, my value system is that I want to live in a place of Torah learning, and so you can offer me anything in the world, I'm not moving. But he goes into a very elaborate series of proof texts to support his view. So we have to explore why he does that. Not only why he does that, but we're also going to pay attention to how he does it. So he quotes 3 different verses. The first pasuk says as follows, when you walk, it will accompany you. We're going to re-evaluate that word, tanche. When you sleep, it will guard over you. And upon your awakening, it will be your conversation. It will be what you speak about. So that's the first pasuk. That's from King Solomon. That's in Mishlei. Then he says, V'chein kosuv b'sefer Tehillim al yedei David Melech Yisrael. Likewise, it is written in the book of Tehillim by David, king of Israel. And there he quotes the pasuk Tov li Torah aspicha me'alfei zav v'chasef. That better for me is the Torah of your mouth than thousands of pieces of gold and silver. Thousands of pieces of gold and silver. And then he quotes the third pasuk, which is from the book of Haggai. And there he says that Hashem tells us, Li hakesef v'li hazav nehum Hashem. Hashem says the silver and the gold is all mine, so says Hashem. 3 different verses. So the first thing we have to do is explore what is the nature of these 3 verses. And then in that, we also have to ask ourselves the question, how come when it comes to the second quotation, the first 2 quotations, he does not tell us the source? We have to rely on the publishers who stuck the source in. And once upon a time, they didn't rely on the publishers. They actually knew the sources of fact. But now we need the publishers to tell us where these verses are from. And yet, when it comes to Tehillim, which quite frankly is the most well-known out of the 3, let's be honest, right? How often do you read the book of Mishlei? How often do you read the book of Haggai? But Tehillim, we know Tehillim. We read Tehillim all the time. So the one reference that we are more likely to know, that's the one that he tells us where it comes from. But he doesn't just tell us where it comes from. He says, and so is written in the book of Tehillim by David, king of Israel. Why do you have to tell me that? We all know who wrote the Tehillim. And even if for whatever reason he believes that we have to know that David is the one who wrote the Tehillim, why does he have to say David Melech Yisrael, David the king of Israel? We know who David is. We know David is the author of Tehillim. We could just say David HaMelech. Why does he have to say David Melech Yisrael? Okay, so these are the things that we left unfinished from last time. We've got to understand the nature of these psukim, and we have to understand why he says them in the way that he says them. Now, I think out of the 3, the easiest of the psukim to understand and to understand in the context is the last one. Because the conversation that he has with this individual is the guy tells him, I want you to come live with us in our city, and I'm going to give you a tremendous amount of gold and silver, and you're never going to have to work another day in your life, and you'll be able to give a tremendous amount of tzedakah, and life is going to be grand. I guess that's an ambiguous statement. And he says, I don't want it. Okay? So why don't I want it? Jump to the 3rd verse. Li hakesef v'li hazav nehum Hashem. Because Hashem says, gold and silver is mine. In other words, what he's telling this person is probably what many other rabbis have learned the hard way, which is, oh, you promised me you're going to give me a lot of money. It's not your money. You are not in control. Li hakesef v'li hazav. Silver and gold belongs to Hashem. If Hashem wants you to give me the money, he'll give me the money. If Hashem wants me to have the money and it's not going to come from you, I'll have the money anyway. So what do I need you for? Li hakesef v'li hazav to recognize that gold and silver comes from Hashem is one of the most foundational principles that we have to have in our lives. On that note, I'll just share personal experience. Some years ago, when we bought the land, which we subsequently developed to build our shul and community center, we bought it because there was a particular individual who was doing extremely well at the time and had pledged to underwrite the lion's share of the costs. So it was on that basis that we went ahead and we did the purchase. And Dafka, at exactly that time, there was a bit of a global issue in a particular resource in the world, and that particular resource was critical to his business, and he was unable not only to honor his commitment to pay the lion's share, he was unable to contribute at all. So silver and gold is mine. That's what Hashem teaches us. It doesn't matter who's going to negotiate with you. But I want to take that one step deeper just for a moment before we go, because the other two verses are much closer to the story, whereas the analysis of this particular verse is not necessarily only about the story. It's a much broader concept. But let's just drill down into this concept for one moment, because it is incredibly fascinating. See, when it comes to money, Jewish people have a very interesting relationship with money, right? And the world thinks that we have a different relationship to money from the relationship we actually have with money. The world thinks that we are obsessed with money, and we actually have this very uncomfortable relationship with money because, first of all, there's that whole concept of whether money is the root of all evil or not, which is not a Jewish concept, just incidentally. But the idea that money is not of our own making, that's a very big topic in Judaism. So, for example, the Torah is critical of the individual who says, Koichi v'oitzem yadi asali esachai lazeh, that it was my strength and my power that brought me this success. That is antithetical to Judaism. It's very much not the way that we're supposed to think. We're supposed to realize that everything comes from Hashem. Now, where do we learn this from, this principle that everything comes from Hashem? And I'm asking the question specifically now, not because it's so much related to the Mishnah we're doing, but because it's related to the parasha that we just read. So where's the origin of the concept that you're supposed to trust that sustenance comes from Hashem? The man. And that's why it says in the Shulchan Aruch that you're supposed to read the section about the man on a daily basis. Parashas Hamon, the story of how the manna fell from heaven. And the reason given for that is because it helps us to develop our faith, recognizing that all our brachas come from Hashem. Right? That's how the Beis Yosef says it, that all of our brachas come from Hashem. Our brachas do not come from our own efforts, they all come from Hashem. Li hakesef li hazav, silver and gold belongs to Hashem, and that's it. Now let's have a look at what happened when they received the man every single day. What do you think happened to them psychologically? In other words, what was the challenge of the man, or what was the lesson of the man every single day? To trust. Okay, it's a little bit generic. Let's be a little bit more specific. So what that there would be for the next day, right? So in other words, you had to trust that you couldn't put anything aside for tomorrow, because tomorrow was once again completely in Hashem's hands. That's the lesson. That's the lesson. So today I have exactly what I need. It has zero bearing on what's going to happen tomorrow. And tomorrow is completely in Hashem's hands. So that is not a lesson in faith. That's a lesson in trust. In other words, there are two lessons here. There's the lesson in faith, as the Beis Yosef says, that it's to teach us that all of our brachas come from Hashem. But there's also a lesson in trust, which is that those brachas come daily. Not just generically that Hashem gives us a bracha, but that every single day He gives us that bracha. And trust in Hashem is supposed to be something which is so powerful that we believe that whatever is going to come our way is going to come from Hashem as we need it in the best way possible. And the Chovos HaLevavos talks about this, how it is that a person can trust that Hashem is going to give them brachas in the best way possible. Who are you? And how can you claim that Hashem owes you anything? As even our forefather Yaakov says, Shema yigroi machet, maybe I've done something wrong, and as a result of that, I've lost my opportunity to get these brachas. So on what basis can I have that kind of trust in Hashem? In the desert, it was simple, because Hashem told them, I'm going to give you the man every single day, so they could trust in Him. But how do I know that I could trust that Hashem is going to give me what I need tomorrow? So the Chovos HaLevavos goes on to explain that the reason is because it's a challenge for a person to have absolute faith and trust in Hashem. And because Hashem always rewards us for things that are very difficult to do, because we then develop this trust and optimism that Hashem will provide for us, therefore, in the merit of that, we're actually going to get these brachas. Just parenthetically, I heard a word last week, also on the same subject, from the Chidush Harim, the Gerer Rebbe, the Chidush Harim. He says, how come it is that people are stressed about how they're going to make it financially till the end of the month, right? People ever had the stress, right? How am I going to make it till the end of the month? There's so many pressures, so many expenses, and then there's unexpected expenses, and there's a limited amount of resources. How am I going to make it to the end of the month? So the Chidush Harim asks a very simple, and it's quite a harsh question. He says, how do you know you'll be here at the end of the month? In other words, the fact that you're stressed about the financial implications of the end of the month means you assume you'll be around for the end of the month. So why do you assume you're going to be around at the end of the month? There's no guarantees. Nobody ever gave you a specific time frame or an undertaking how do you know? You obviously trust Hashem that you're going to survive to the end of the month. So he says, if you trust Hashem that you're going to live until the end of the month, surely you should trust Hashem that you'll have all the things you need in order to live till the end of the month. So, if you trust Him with your life, you should definitely trust Him with your finances. So this is the concept of bitachon. This is the concept of trust in Hashem. Not just faith in Hashem, but trust in Hashem. When Hashem says that the gold and the silver is mine, that doesn't only mean that Hashem is holding the controls and whatever Hashem decides is what you're going to get. And there is no way in the world, with all the effort that any human being will ever invest, it is impossible to earn 1 cent more than what Hashem is willing to allocate to you. There's nothing you can do about it. That's what Hashem has allocated. You cannot get 1 cent more. Is it possible that a person could get less? Yes, it is possible. A person could just choose not to work, not to put in effort. So then don't access the bracha. But you cannot get 1 cent more than Hashem has allocated. Li ha-kesef li hazav, the silver and the gold is mine, says Hashem. Now here's the question. So what does that actually mean in our lives? In other words, am I supposed to trust that, let's say for argument's sake, that a person is in business. So they're now trying to put together a particular business deal. Are they supposed to trust Hashem that the business deal will succeed? Let's say that a person is selling a particular product and you need to sell a certain amount of units in order to make a profit. So do I have to trust in Hashem that I'm going to sell a certain amount of units? What does trust mean? So I'll give you an illustration of this. We know that the Midrash is very critical of Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik was in prison. He was there on a libel. He didn't deserve to be in prison. In fact, he didn't deserve to be in Egypt in the first place because his brothers had sold him as a slave. That's how he ended up in Egypt. So you already had one good reason for resentment. And then Potiphar's wife, when she couldn't convince him to get involved in her scandal, then she alleged all kinds of things against him, which got him into prison. So again, he has reason for resentment because now he's in prison. And then one day, out of the blue, who's in the prison with him? Two of the most illustrious people in the nation, the royal butler and the royal baker. And he notices one day that they're very glum, which, let's be honest, they're in prison. You kind of expect them to be glum, right? Here are people who were at the highest echelons of society and now they're locked away in a prison. Obviously, they are going to be depressed. That shows you how discerning Yosef must have been of people's state of mind, that he was recognizing that they're more depressed than they should have been. Nobody ever reads that into the story, which parenthetically has another good lesson for us, that if you really attune yourself to other people's problems, it actually solves your own problems. That's another discussion for another time. Anyhow, so now he sees these two guys are looking depressed. He says, "What's up? What's bothering you?" And they both tell him that they've had these disturbing dreams and they don't know how to make sense of it. And he says, "Tell me the dream. Maybe Hashem will inspire me to be able to help you," which he does. And he's then able to tell the royal butler that he's going to be reinstated into his position in 3 days' time. And then he says to him, "Ki im zechartani, if only you'll remember me at that point, vehiz kartani el paroi, and you will mention me to Paroi, and then I'll get out of prison." So the Midrash says that wasn't a good move. The fact that Yosef said to him two expressions, zechartani, remember me, vehiz kartani, and mention me, so because of that, he landed up staying another 2 years in prison over and above what he should have. And that's the next parasha starts. It was 2 years later that Pharaoh has his dream, which gives an opportunity for the royal butler to introduce Yosef and get him out of prison. So why is it that Yosef stays for 2 extra years in prison? Because he put his trust in the royal butler instead of Hashem. That's what the Midrash says. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever in your life heard a story of a person who tells you, "You can't believe what happened, it was so bashert, it was unbelievable. I just happened to be sitting next to this person and we got talking and it was exactly the person that I needed to speak to because they could put me in touch with whatever, right?" So I want to ask you, does that mean this person has no trust in Hashem? They put their trust in the individual. Where from? What? You have to, right? You got to do what you got to do. But not only that, we're not just talking about that you got to do what you got to do. You got to recognize when Hashem puts something in your path. That's the old story of the guy sitting on the roof while the flood waters are rising. It says, God will save me and God will save me, right? That's nonsense. We have to live our lives with our eyes open, and we have to recognize that Hashem is sending something our way and take the opportunity. Isn't that not what Yosef did? He saw the royal butler. He's thinking to himself, what are the chances the royal bake and the royal butler are going to land up in prison the same time that I'm there and have a dream and I can interpret it? So he sees this all as being Bashert. This is divine providence. This is what's supposed to happen. And then he says, I want you to speak to Paroi on my behalf. Where did Yosef go wrong? So this is exactly the message here that Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma is telling this individual. Li hakesef veli hazav. You have to remember that at the end of the day, Hashem controls. In this case, he's talking about financial resources, but the same principle applies to any resources. Hashem is in control. Hashem has the on and off switch. Hashem has the purse strings. Hashem decides whether or not you get the brocha. Therefore, this is the subtlety of trust in Hashem. Because Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma could have said the same thing. Surely it's Basheret. Hashem sent this man. He's in my path. Here he's offering me an opportunity with a massive salary. Maybe it's a message from Hashem. And how often do we hear people say things like that? This and this occurred to me. It must be a sign. I think Hashem's telling me something. People frequently say that. Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma could have said the same thing. Out of the blue, a guy comes over to me and he offers me all of these opportunities. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe Hashem wants me to go down that road. So how do you know if it is or isn't the correct decision to make? Says the pasuk. Again, we're starting from the third pasuk. We'll move our way back. Li hakesef veli hazav ne'um Hashem. We have to recognize that brocha, in this case financial brocha, silver and gold, that comes from Hashem. The minute something crosses my mind to suggest that the brocha may come through something or someone else, that is a red flag. Don't go there. So Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma, here's a man saying, I will give you the silver and the gold. Red flag. There's no such thing. You cannot give me silver and gold. If you came to me and said, there's an opportunity to go to this community and to inspire the people and become their leader and their rabbi, and I will hopefully be a conduit of Hashem's brocha, fine. But the minute the guy says, I will give you all this gold and silver, verboten. Forget it. That is wrong. That is not a Jewish attitude. Hashem gives silver and gold, and if that is the basis on which you want me to come join you, I cannot do so. Same thing with Yosef. Yosef sees the butler in the prison with him. He recognizes that obviously this is an opportunity, the opportunity for him to interpret the butler's dream, and then Hashem will take it from there. Hashem will then inspire the royal butler to tell Paroi about this amazing guy in the prison. Yosef is supposed to leave that in Hashem's department. Because Li hakesef v'li hazav. Hashem is the one in control of the silver and the gold, or in this case, freedom or being imprisoned. But Yosef oversteps and he says, you remember me. You, the butler, you remember me. And you mention me to Paroi, red flag. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to, as the expression goes, dictate to Hashem how to give him your brochas. You have to trust that Hashem will give the brocha. And you have to make your hishtadlus to create an environment for the brocha. But there's a very subtle line between doing that and putting your faith in that channel of the brocha. And that's the lesson that we get out of at least the third pasuk that he brings as proof for his decision. Now let's go back to the two preceding pasukim. We'll start now with the first, which is the simpler of the two that we're now going to explore. And then once we get to the second pasuk, that is going to completely revolutionize the whole story for us. Everything we thought we understood about the story of Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma is going to go out the window compared to this deeper perspective of what the story is all about. So let's have a look at the first pasuk. The first pasuk says, Bisalechecha tanche oisach. When you walk, tanche oisach. Now what does that word mean, tanche? So there's a whole very involved in exploration of this concept in also the parasha that we just read this past Shabbos. Where do you see anything in the parasha that's related to this word tanche oisach in this parasha that we just read? Anybody off the top of your head? I'll give you a clue. It's right at the beginning of the parasha. What does it say? Vahi b'shalach paroi v'loi nacham Elokim. V'lo nacham Elokim. Nacham is like this word, tanche. What does it mean? Hashem did not lead the people on the most direct route to the promised land. Instead, he took them derech hamidbar Yamsuf. He took them down through the desert along the edge of the Yamsuf, which the Red Sea, which eventually led to the fact that the Egyptians drove them towards the Red Sea, which eventually led to the miracle of the splitting of the sea. But the fact is that the word nacham means to lead them. So Rashi goes into quite a detailed examination of that word. What does the word actually mean? And he brings various places from other parts of Tanakh that illustrate that it means to lead. And he quotes this pasuk as one of them. Bisalecho tanche oisach. That it means to lead you. In other words, what he's saying is that Torah will lead you through life. The Al-Shich points out that often in life, when we have a choice between paths, we choose, or we want to choose, the path of least resistance, right? That's the human condition, let's be honest. We'd rather choose the path of least resistance. They use the parable of a man riding on a donkey who comes to a fork in the road. Now, if you've ever watched a donkey, when it's walking, it walks with its head down, like the pasuk says, Ruach habahima yoredesi lamato, that the nature, the spirit of an animal is downwards. It's focused on the ground. So you come to the fork in the road, and the donkey can see that the left-hand path is clear, and the right-hand path is filled with stones and maybe some thorns. And much to the donkey's dismay, the rider wants to turn right. And the donkey rebels, doesn't want to walk right. It can see all the obstacles. But what the donkey cannot see, because it's only looking down, so it can see exactly what's in front of it, is that further down the path, the left-hand path becomes completely treacherous and impassable, whereas the right-hand path clears up and eventually you get to your destination. But he can't see that because he's a donkey, and a donkey can only see what's right in front of him. The rider who has vision can tell the difference. Now that's what happens to us often in our lives. We come to crossroads, ethical crossroads, life decisions, and we're not quite sure which way to go. And we have this whole cheshbon in our head. Well, if I choose this, how do they go, the old Yiddish way of doing it? On the one hand, and on the other hand, right? So if I go this way, maybe it's going to bring me that benefit, but then there are those challenges. If I go that way, it will bring me these benefits, would be those challenges. And we don't know where to go. So that's what he tells us, says the Al-Sheikh, if you learn Torah, it will guide you to be able to know where to go. We had somebody at us over Shabbos who told an incredible story that they were very early on in their journey of becoming involved in their Judaism. And this person was very steeply involved in the academic world. And they had a particular dilemma. So they went to one of their academic mentors to help iron out this particular dilemma. They couldn't get anywhere. So then they went to an individual who was the spiritual leader of the Reform community and asked their advice. And this individual said that they spent about 6 hours together dissecting the idea, and he walked out as confused as he was when he went in. After that, he went to speak to one of the local rabbonim here in town. He wasn't a frum guy. He went to speak to one of the rabbonim, walked in, presented his dilemma that had been torturing him now for a few weeks. The rabbi said to him, the halacha is X. And that was it. It was resolved in 5 minutes with absolute clarity. If you walk in the path of Torah, it will guide you through those thorny issues in life, because you'll be open to hear the wisdom of Hashem rather than trying to work things out using human wisdom, which is fallible and is often going to get it wrong. So that's the first message, which incidentally links to another meaning of the word. Tanche can also come from the word menucha, which is to be at ease, right? To be at rest. So when you follow the path of Torah, then bisalecha, as you find your way through life, not only will you have clarity, but it'll be calm and easy to establish that clarity. And the more a person has Torah in their life, there's no question about it, the more clarity they have. So that's the first lesson that it's teaching us. Therefore, he says, Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma says to this person, it's all very well that I'm going to come live with you, but as long as I have the Torah, I'll have clarity. And right now I have that clarity, and I know that I don't belong in your place. That's why I'm going back to where I live and not following the money trail. And then he says, let me tell you some other things that Torah has to offer that other things don't have to offer, even all of the money in the world. And that is, v'shachbecha tishmor alecha, that when you sleep, it protects you. Now, money is the exact opposite, right? When you sleep, your money is unprotected. You need some kind of a mechanism to protect your money while you sleep. And the reality is, even while you're awake, you can't necessarily protect your money, your assets, because at the end of the day, as we well know, it's possible for people to come along and, God forbid, take things from us. Torah is the exact opposite. B'shach b'cha, while you're sleeping, tishmor alecha, it protects you. Because you would have thought, and there's a whole discussion about this in the Gemara, about the difference between a mitzvah and Torah. The Gemara goes through a whole discussion about it, but one of the questions is, does a mitzvah protect you when you're not doing the mitzvah? And the Gemara's conclusion is, megana but not matzla, which means it can protect you, but it can't save you from danger. Whereas the Torah is able to protect you and to save you from danger, even when you're not learning Torah. That's b'shach b'cha, even when you're sleeping. So you're not engaged in the Torah. So technically, you don't have the Torah with you to be able to protect you. Well, that's the greatness of the Torah, is that even when you're not directly engaged with it, sleeping, not wasting your time, sleeping, then the Torah will protect you. It says, what money in the world can get you that? And not only that, and when you wake up, it will be your conversation. So here the Al-Sheikh tells a story which should be quite familiar to everybody, I think. And that is, remember the story when King Shaul desperately wanted to be able to contact the Prophet Shmuel because he had been very close to the Prophet Shmuel. Unfortunately, at the end, they had a very serious disconnect because Shmuel told him how to deal with Amalek and he didn't really listen. So things got a bit rough at the end, and then Shmuel passed away and Shaul had to go and fight against the Philistines, and he was worried about what's going to happen. So despite the fact that Shaul had eradicated witches or necromancers from the whole of Israel, he managed to track somebody down, went incognito, because obviously they would never use their trade if they knew it was King Saul. So he goes to call the spirit of Shmuel, and that's basically when Shmuel tells him he's not going to survive the war and it's over. But that's not the point. The point is he calls up the Prophet Shmuel. And the Tanakh makes it like a very dramatic thing where Shmuel comes along and says, who's disturbed me and why have you disturbed me and what's going on over here? And the Midrash says that at that point what happened was Shmuel gets the summons to come engage with the earthlings. That's basically what's going on. And so the Midrash says that at that point in time, Shmuel's soul went first to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov and said, I need your help. They're calling me. He assumed they're calling me for the resurrection of the dead. And now I'm going to have to stand before the day of judgment, the great day of judgment. And I need you to support me that I did what I was supposed to do, that I led the Jewish people as I should. So the Al-Sheikh uses that to illustrate that when you wake up in the future, in the time of Mashiach, in the time of the resurrection, when we're woken again, hakitzu v'rananu sheichne ofar, same words, right? Hakitzu and hakitzoisa. When we wake up, those who lie in the dust are going to wake up and be resurrected. There's going to be this tremendous fear that people have. How will I explain before Hashem at that point that I lived my life the way that I should have? So the Al-Sheikh says that's the guarantee of the Torah. Hakitzoisa, when you wake up in the future, in the time of Mashiach, the Torah will speak on your behalf. The Torah that you learned during your lifetime, that will be your advocate, and you won't have to explain what you've done in your life. The words of the Torah will speak on your behalf. So he says, Rabbi Yossi says to him, so what are you going to offer me? You're going to offer me money? Money cannot buy any of these things. Now, one of the reasons that he tried to sell him on the story of money, which we spoke about already last week, is because then you can give a lot of tzedakah, right? Exactly like the negotiation people make when they buy the lottery ticket. So if I win the lottery, then I can give a lot of tzedakah. So Hashem, it's in your interest that I win the lottery. That's effectively what this guy's saying to Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. It's in your interest, because if you become really wealthy, you can give a lot of tzedakah. Therefore, he says, B'chein kosuv b'tehilim al yidei David melech Yisrael. He says, what do you think? I can give a lot of tzedakah. Look at what David HaMelech wrote in Tehillim. David HaMelech was the wealthiest person of his time and one of the wealthiest people across the whole of Jewish history. He gave, not only did he give tzedakah, the Gemara tells us that he went about finding ways to assist the community to earn, because we know that the highest form of tzedakah is teaching somebody to fish. So he went about and he found all these ways to get the community to be self-sufficient. And after all of that, with all of the gold and all of the silver and all of the goodwill and all of the things that he did and all of the contributions that he made and all of the welfare that he instituted, what does David HaMelech say in summary? I'd rather have the Torah of your mouth than all of these thousands of pieces of gold and silver. That's why he doesn't just say, it says it in Tehillim. He says, do you remember who wrote Tehillim? He had the exact experience that you're trying to offer me. He was in a position of this tremendous magnanimous generosity, and still he knew firsthand that it's better to learn Torah. Right? Because of course it's less compelling when somebody doesn't have money and they tell you that Torah is more valuable than money than if somebody who has a lot of money and then they tell you that Torah is more valuable than money. So that's what he says, Torah spicha me'alfei zahav v'chosef, better for me is the Torah of your mouth than thousands of pieces of gold and silver. Why does King David call it Torah spicha, the Torah of your mouth? Why doesn't it just say Torah secha, as he says in the same chapter of Tehillim? Right? See how much I love your Torah all my day. That's what I speak about. How come over here he says Torah picha, the Torah of your mouth? So the Al-Sheikh says the reason is because we're told that every time that a person learns Torah, in fact, the Gemara goes this far, and it says, Kol masha talmid vasik asid lichadesh, that even something that an exceptional student would innovate in Torah, hakol nitan Moshe misinai, was all given to Moshe at Mount Sinai. In other words, when you say Torah, it's not your stuff, it's not your wisdom, it's not your insight. It's Hashem's, so to speak, speech coming through you. That's the value of Torah. Whereas doing a mitzvah, even though the mitzvah is commanded by Hashem's word, because Hashem is the one obviously told us to do it, but the mitzvah itself is not like Hashem is speaking in the now. Whereas when I learn Torah, it is that I'm connected to Hashem in such a deep way that it's like I'm speaking in the now. Therefore, he says, Tovli Torah picha. I would rather have the Torah that allows me the opportunity to be speaking your word. It's as if you are speaking through me at this point. May alfei zahav v'chosef, rather than all of the mitzvahs that I could do with gold and silver. Not that there's something, God forbid, wrong with a mitzvah, but the depth of relationship that you create between yourself and Hashem through Torah learning is exponentially beyond the depth of relationship that occurs when you do a mitzvah. And with that, we're going to go into, like I said, review the whole story of the conversation between this man and Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma based on this particular pasuk. Tovli Torah spicha me alfei zahav v'chosef. We're going to look at those three words. Alfei zahav v'chosef. What's alfei? Thousands. Zahav is gold and kesef is silver. So there's something about the Torah, specifically Torah picha, the Torah as it has been spoken by Hashem. This is very important. When was the Torah spoken by Hashem? At Mount Sinai. That's when Hashem spoke the Torah. So there's something unique about the Torah that is spoken by Hashem that is more than alfei. We're going to see what that word means besides just thousands. Zahav v'chosef, gold and silver. So besides for the word elef, which means thousand, what other word do we have associated with that spelling? Aleph, lamed, pei. Aluf. What's an aluf? A general, a high-ranking individual, somebody who is head and shoulders above the community. Correct. What else? What's that?
A champion as well.
A champion, correct. What other word? Aleph. Now, what does aleph mean? And please don't tell me the first letter of the alphabet, because that's not what it means. That's just what it is. But what does it mean? What does the word aleph mean?
I thought it said alufo shel ha'olam.
That's aluf. That's true. No, 100%. But that is the aluf aspect, which is associated with the word aleph. But what does the actual word aleph mean? What does it mean? It means a'alefcha chachma. I will teach you wisdom. The word aleph is actually a word associated with teaching or with learning. So now he's saying, Tovli Torah spicha, it is better for me to have the Torah of your mouth, me alfei, rather than the learning of zahav v'chosef, of gold and silver. Now what does that mean? More than the learning of gold and silver. And that's what I'm saying. We're going to completely revamp the story and take it besides. Obviously the story really happened and there was a guy who approached Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma and he offered him an opportunity, etc., which is all true. But as is always the case in the stories that the Torah chooses to tell us, or the stories that the Mishnah chooses to tell us, these are not for story value. These are stories that have layers within layers, and therefore it is teaching us simultaneously some profound lessons about what Judaism is. And there are two possible ways that you could experience Judaism. You could experience Judaism in the land of gold and silver, or you could experience Judaism in the land of the word of Hashem's mouth. What's the difference? So let's first look at Zahav and Kesef. What do they represent? Zahav and Kesef, gold and silver. What do they represent spiritually, outside of just the material themselves? Bear in mind, in order to build the Mishkan, in order to build Hashem's home, the first items on the list, I mean, there are many items on the list, 15, 16 items on the list, right? But the first items on the list are Zahav, Kesef, and Nechoshes, gold, silver, and copper. And gold and silver emerge frequently in the Torah as either metals or symbolisms. So what do they represent? Let's start with silver, because it's a little easier. We'll start with silver, and from there we'll progress to gold, because we do know that gold is more valuable than silver. So first of all, do you know any other word in Hebrew associated with the word kesef? So kesef means silver or money. What other words do we know that are associated with the word kesef? Because that's going to be a huge clue.
Yearn.
Here's what?
Yearn, machsov.
To yearn, right? Nichsoif nichsafta, right? It means to yearn, to aspire. That's the meaning of the word kesef. Now, if I have a relationship with a person where I'm yearning for that person, what does that tell you about how I feel about that person? It means I love them, right? Okay, so Nichsefa, David HaMelech says, Nichsefa v'gam kol so nafshi. My soul yearns for Hashem to the extent that gam kolsa, it feels like it's going to expire. I have such a deep love for Hashem that I don't know how I could live anymore. That's basically what he's saying. Like this world is such a limiting place, and therefore I have this tremendous love of Hashem. So silver is symbolic of love of Hashem. In many places in the Torah, it's symbolic of love of Hashem. By the way, just to make this a little bit more colorful, the color silver is associated with the color white, which is a color of chesed, which is the flip side of love. So in other words, even just in terms of Hashem created the physical material, it looks like something that represents the color of love. In Judaism, the color of love is white, not like in Hallmark where the color is red. So that's kesef. Kesef is this tremendous love of Hashem, where you have so much love of Hashem that you feel like you can't even live in this world anymore, because you'd rather break free so that your neshama is not shackled in your body, and you can have this direct connection to Hashem. So if silver is this tremendous love of Hashem, what do you think gold is? Remember, gold is more valuable. Gold is more valuable than silver. So what do you think gold is? If silver is this overpowering love of Hashem, what's gold? So it's what? There's a process that gold goes through. There's a process silver also has to be refined. But specifically, so we know because we live in this part of the world. So you go and you watch the gold pour, and you see that gold is produced through heat. You've got to smelt it, right? In order to produce gold, you have to heat. And heat is a symbol of also love of Hashem, but a completely different kind of love of Hashem. It's a very passionate, very overwhelming love of Hashem. So therefore, silver and gold are often referred to as the two types of love towards Hashem that we have. But sometimes gold is also referred to as a representation of the highest level of connection to Hashem, which is called yira ilaha. Not fear of God, but awe of God, where Hashem is so real to me and so overwhelming and so precious to me, that's gold, so precious to me that everything else pales in comparison. Now, where and when do you think a person has the highest or most acute experiences of love of Hashem or awe of Hashem? At what stage of the human experience do we have the greatest love and awe of Hashem? Close? When? Close? Close? Before you're born. Before you're born, the neshama in Gan Eden, before it is born, that's what it lives with. The neshama in Gan Eden does not have all the distractions and temptations that we have. There are no other things to love. There are no other things to be afraid of, or more appropriately, to be in awe of. So the neshama on high has this tremendous, tremendous experience of closeness to Hashem, of love of Hashem, of awe of Hashem, and all of that is lost when a person's neshama is put into the body, because now we have to see through physical eyes and experience the world through the five senses, and have all the limitations of being tired and hungry and bored and ADD and all the other things that come our way. So it curtails the opportunity of the neshama to have this tremendous love of Hashem and this tremendous awe of Hashem. So there's this person who comes into the picture and says, come with me, I'll take you back there. I'll take you back to the place of Alfei Zahav V'Chosef. You'll learn Torah. Of course you'll learn Torah. In Shemayim, they learn Torah. What do you think they do all day? What do you think they do in Gan Eden all day long? That's what they do. They learn Torah. We talk about the Yeshiva Shel Maila, the supernal Yeshiva, and that is the experience of a neshama in heaven, is learning Torah, and in a completely different way to how we learn Torah. They don't have to struggle with understanding terminology or not getting the concept or trying to answer a question and finding contradictory statements. They don't have any of that. It's a smooth path, and everything is really clear, and that's the beauty of being in Gan Eden. So here's this voice that says, come with me. I'm going to take you to a place, and in that place, Alfei Zav V'Chosef. The kind of learning that you're going to do is going to be the learning that generates this love and fear of Hashem. You'll be free of the shackles of this world. You won't have to have any responsibilities, like in the story where the guy says, I'll give you all the money in the world. You won't have to worry about earning a living. So he has the spiritual interpretation of the same thing. This is the voice inside of us that says, you know what? It's worth it to leave this world so that the neshama can return back to Hashem, where it will guaranteed have a greater experience of holiness. Guaranteed. Won't have all this nonsense in the world. Won't have to watch what's happening with the hostages. Not going to have to worry about the State of the Nation address or the load shedding, or if they're going to put tariffs on your solar panels, all those things. You don't have to worry about it. You're going to be in Shemayim. And there were people in our history who found this very compelling, like, for example, Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aaron. So what happens with Nadav and Avihu? It says, Bahakrivam Eish Zara Lashem. They approached Hashem in the Mishkan with a foreign fire. Fire is love, and a very intense kind of love. And fire defies gravity. It wants to move out of this world. So they approach Hashem with an interest to be able to leave the world behind and to be able to connect to Hashem. But it's Zara. It is inappropriate, because the whole purpose of the world is to be in the world. Now here comes the real chap of this. What's so attractive about Gan Eden is the experience that we can have as a neshama. So if I'm interested in my experience, if I'm interested in my love, my closeness to Hashem, Gan Eden is a better place to be than earth. But we're not supposed to live with just self-interest. The question is, what does Hashem want? Where did Hashem choose to focus? Did he give the Torah to angels? Well, we know the famous Gemara in Shabbos where the angels protested and they didn't want the Torah to go to humans, and Moshe was able to illustrate to them that they had it wrong and that actually the Torah belongs on earth. So where will you find Torah's picha? Where will you find the Torah of Hashem's word? In other words, the Torah that Hashem invested himself in with all of his essence, not in Gan Eden. Even though that's a place where you learn with love and with awe of Hashem, and it's so spiritually attractive and there's no question about it. It's much more advanced experientially than it is here in this world. But where do you capture Hashem's essence? Only in this world. That's why we mourn when a person passes away. Because think about it. We shouldn't, surely. They're going to Gan Eden. It's much better. People are always saying that, right? They're in a better place now. We're not just saying that to make people feel better. It is a better place. So why are we mourning if they're in a better place? Because they no longer have the opportunity to engage with Hashem's essence. And that's embedded in the first word of the Aseret HaDibros, the Ten Commandments, which happens also to be this week's parasha, where Hashem says, Anoichi. And the Gemara tells us Anoichi is an acronym for Ano Nafshi Kesavis Yohavis. I've taken my soul, written it into the Torah, and given it to you. What does it mean, Hashem's soul? It means the essence of Hashem's being is where? In the Torah. That's this conversation between Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma and this man. This man is probably not even a man. It's a voice in our heads. It's a voice in our heads that tells us maybe one day when we escape the shackles of the human experience, then we'll be able to have a real meaningful connection to Hashem, because we'll feel the love that we don't feel now, and we'll feel the awe that we don't feel now. Says Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma, and give me all the gold and silver in the world. Give me all the experiences, all the depth, all the excitement in the world, but I need to be where Hashem wants me to be. And Hashem wants me to be here, a human on earth, wading my way through the Torah, using my intellect to the best of my ability, because only there do you access Torah's picha, the word of Hashem, as Hashem expressed it with its full power. That's the greatness of living here, as opposed to being in Shemayim. And that's why we have to grab every day that we have here and use it to the max, because as the pasuk says, One day there will be days where we look back and say, Ein li bohem chayfetz. I no longer have the same excitement about life because I don't have the opportunity and the challenge that I used to have when it was just a physical world. So that's his message. Grab the Torah with both hands. Don't get distracted by the allure of how much better things will be in a spiritual environment. The real tachlis is here and now with every bit of Torah that we learn.